In studio with us now, the Speaker Pro Tem of the House of Representatives for the state of Mississippi, and a man who's just ready for the session to be over, Jason White. I think that's a fair assessment.
It's a fair assessment on behalf of myself and all my colleagues.
Yeah, I don't think there's anybody over there going, boy, I'm glad we're still here, because this has been just the wackiest session probably in history, I would think.
Certainly in my 9 years, and I think somebody said yesterday, I heard this was maybe the longest legislature had ever been in session since the Civil War. Yeah, it's the session that won't end. It feels like two sessions. It feels like the January, February, March we were here was a session unto itself. And about spring break, we all went home and, we didn't come back. So anyway, it's been interesting for sure.
Well, and I know how you guys feel, because looking at it from my perspective, back, February, March, we were all up in the middle of this, and everything was just trucking along like it always does. I was getting the reports every night and reading up on everything that was happening. And now that it's back, I'm getting the reports every night, and they pop up in my email, and I go, yeah, really?
Well, it is odd that so many bills or issues that we thought were so important in January and February before the pandemic really hit, all of a sudden that stuff that, oh man, the world was going to stop if we didn't pass this law or deal with this issue, all that stuff is gone. You can't even find the folks that were pushing that stuff.
Yeah, now it's like, oh, well, no, we got other things to talk about now. And of course that comes in large part from the budgetary shortfalls that we're facing here, which is a very real problem you guys are having to deal with in the budget hearings right now.
Not only for getting out of fiscal year 2020, which ends this month, but our new budget, which starts July 1 of 2020 and runs through this time next year. So, yeah, two different budgets dealing with issues with both.
Yeah, but the good news is we actually did what we were supposed to do before the pandemic. So we do have the rainy day fund. We had a surplus going into this entire crisis. So that's the thing to remember. And I know this sounds like a trite expression. It could have been so much worse for us.
It really could have, and I won't toot our horn too much, but I will say, over the last 8 years, we took a lot of grief sometimes for continuing to put money into that rainy day fund when we did have a lot of needs statewide and some budgets were getting cut, but we were continuing to put that money into rainy day fund and got it filled up to the point where now, while it's bad, the sky's not falling. We do have money to cover it. We need about $100 million to get out of this fiscal year. The governor has authority to go into the rainy day fund to get $50 million at a time to do that. So we feel like he'll do that between now and the end of the month, and we can give him permission to hit it one more time for another 50 to get the 100 we need to get out. As you know, Department of Revenue, everybody, all state leaders kind of agreed that we would push off, when the feds pushed off the tax filing day from April 15th to July 15th, we did the same with our state income tax. And so normally revenue that we receive for this fiscal year got pushed to July 15th, so it will actually come in what is fiscal year 2021. So while we're absorbing that, it will be a boost to us for our 21 budget, if you will. So not only do we take the hit of just what happened with the economy due to the delay in tax filings, we lost that revenue as well. But luckily, that will help us in the 21 budget.
Well, and that's the thing, because when you look at the numbers, the 21 budget has a bigger shortfall projected than we've got for 2020, which is kind of surprising, really, when you think about it, because we thought all the impact was going to be right here, but it's starting to look like this is going to drag out a bit more.
All the federal stimulus money, the federal unemployment side that kicked in with our state unemployment, all the stimulus funds and things that happened as a result of the CARES Act and the other congressional action, all that money flowed to the states, and I guess you would say it did what it was intended to do, which was get us through the front end of this thing. But, that money's going to dry up and stop at some point. I mean, I know they're just printing it in Washington, but at some point they're going to run out of ink, and we're going to have to do something different. So that's what we're worried about, and that's what the experts and economists that talk to us about is what's going to happen this fall. Are we going to, as that kind of phases out, are we going to pick back up? Traditionally in Mississippi, we're slow to go into a downturn, and we're slow to come out of it. So some concerns there. So we've got to be real careful in the budget, and we are looking at cuts.
Well, and this is a different situation, though. We're usually slow to go in, and we're usually months to years behind everybody else when these kind of things start. But it started for everybody literally with the flip of a switch this time. Right. So it's a different situation. So we don't know is the problem.
It is. We don't know. And that's our state economist who comes and talks to us regular, Darren Webb, super sharp guy. And he's like, we just don't know. And if anybody tells you something concrete, I can assure you they don't know what they're talking about. So anyway, it's interesting times in which to be involved in state government.
That may be the understatement of the entire session right there, Jason. That's it. Have you noticed a change in attitude over in the House with the second session versus the first session? I know you mentioned it earlier, that there were a lot of things back in February. And, I had you in here a couple of times back in February on the JT show in March. Where we were talking about completely different things than we're talking about now. But just the overall mood, the attitude, the motivation. Have you noticed any major changes?
Here's the one major change. People are not, when I say people, I mean my colleagues in the House and even in the state Senate, everybody's not so concerned about these little things that everybody thought was so important, or their pet project, or this or that, this one bill that they had to have that, was going to lower the speed limit by 3 miles per hour, whatever it is. All those things kind of fall to the wayside, and you start really focusing on what's important. And in that atmosphere, you've seen a spirit of bipartisanship. You've seen less bickering. We've seen less fighting and debating on the floor and folks wanting to kill and strangle each other. We've seen a lot less of that. Now, we're here in these final few days of we hope to get out of here next week. And then maybe come back in October for a week. But that could ramp up a little bit as we start making final decisions on how to spend the rest of this CARES Act money, almost $900 million, but and dealing with a final budget. But there's been more of a spirit of cooperation and get in and get out, tend to your business and get gone. We're back in the House and in the Senate, I guess to some extent, of everybody's not coming into the chamber. We've got assigned rooms throughout the Capitol, and everybody's watching on the computer monitor. So it's just weird to go to the well and present a bill, and you look out on the floor, and it's almost nobody in there. It's just a weird, different kind of thing for sure.
And that, of course, going back to that, was prompted by the fact that you had a staffer over there, right, that was diagnosed.
We did. And there's been testing going on at the Capitol all this week. And the first day, I think 160 or 70 people were tested, which was Monday, and then they finished up testing yesterday. So be anxious to see what those results show.
Do you think that change in attitude is primarily coming from talking about people not just, getting into fistfights on the floor? Do you think that comes more from a position of, well, this is a crisis situation and we got to get stuff done, or does it come more from a position of, are we not home yet? Can we just get done and get out?
I think it's a combination of both. We passed a resolution, HCR 69, which extended the session, and we passed it in the House first, and it had all these monthly continuing each. The way the Constitution reads, the only way you can extend a session is on 30-day increments. So that's the way the resolution set it forth, and the minute some folks read that, they thought, oh, my Lord, we're going to be here every day from now to the end of December, which was never the intention, but it caused eyes to glaze over, and folks started passing out saying, what is going on? I've got a business, I've got a family, I've got things going on at home. There's an issue of let's get it over with and let's get it done and get out of here. Either because truly folks are scared for their own health or the health of their friends or their family, and we're all exposed to, we come from all corners of the state every day and are there in that building.
And mingle up into one building,
right,
which is a dangerous thing right now.
It is.
So, yeah, and thank you guys for doing that. And we appreciate you bringing some of it over here for Perez, too.
Well, I was thinking about, I started to stop off in the bathroom as I came in, Perez, but I thought about that 3-foot vortex you were talking about. I just came on in here.
That's probably for the best, Jason. Jason White, Speaker Pro Tem of the House. We'll continue with him on the Gallo Show live from the Trustmark studio in the center of the vortex. Next, in studio with us, the Speaker Pro Tem, Jason White. And, you know, at least some of the business is over. You had a deadline yesterday, right?
We had a deadline for general bills. coming from the other house. So in other words, Senate bills, general bills in the Senate that had come to the House, and House bills that we had passed that had gone to the Senate, we had to pass each other's bills by yesterday, or have original floor action. In other words, get voted up or down or something on them by yesterday, or they died last night.
And number one, you look very upset about that. But I would suspect you had quite a few, and that's always the case. But I would suspect you had quite a few that just didn't make that deadline, and they're gone now.
They didn't. When I first started, boy, I thought more was better. But as you get into this thing and look at it, the best offense might be a good defense, and so if we're not changing your laws, that might be a good thing.
Well, to me, the old adage comes into play here. Quality, not quantity.
That's right. That's right. And that has not always probably been the case in your Mississippi legislature. But it is tough to get a bill passed, and there's a reason for that. And so things that we think are really important in the House, the Senate kills. Things that the senators think are really important, we kill. And if anything makes it out of there, usually it's got some merit to it. So lots of folks are waking up this morning and seeing on that calendar their stuff is dead and gone, but that's okay too. It'll be all right.
It happens.
It happens.
There's always next year.
And which is just 6 months away. We'll be into a new session.
That was my question, Jason. Is there going to be a delineating line between this session and next session, or is it just going to bleed over at this point?
There is for sure going to be. In that resolution I keep talking about that we passed a couple of weeks ago, HCR 69, we did set forth some parameters. We intend to hopefully leave Jackson next week with a budget, a balanced budget that will have some minor cuts to it over last year's budget. There will probably be a 3 to 4% cut, but lots of folks in state agencies said, hey, we can live with that. We can tighten the belt and do that. When we were looking at 12 to 14% cuts, now you're talking about lots of folks being sent home and things like that. It's going to be disastrous. Some people might say it was going to be good. It was going to force government to right size. So there are all these different thoughts along those lines. But at any rate, it looks like it's going to be a 3 to 4% cut, not across the board. Some things less, some things a little more. But we hope to do that next week, get out of here. We hope to pass bills that will appropriate and spend most of this CARES Act money that's left, about $900 million. We hope to get that done. We get those two things done and get out of town. What the resolution provides for, if Congress acts and appropriates more money, or if they change the regs on what the money they've already sent us should or could be spent on, that's two triggering events that could bring us back to Jackson. If none of that happens, or even if that does happen and we're back for a day or two to adjust something, we will also be back the first full week of October. We'll be back October the 5th on a Monday, and could be in session no more than that week for 6 days through Saturday. So we will sine die on October the 10th one way or another.
That's what I was going to ask.
Whether we're here in town. Even if we're not here in town, we've already set the date and time on paper, so it'll happen again in the middle of the night if we're not here.
That may be the shortest amount of time between sine die and gavel in for the next session ever.
From a regular session, I would be interested to know if there'd been one that was longer.
Because that's going to give you, 3 months maybe between the two?
Yep. Less than 3, really.
Wow. Now, we were talking during the break about one thing that has come up, which is something that's been discussed on a national level and all over the place, and that's some liability protection for healthcare workers and things like that. That's being discussed over there right now, right?
That's being discussed, and hopefully we can get something done on that issue before we leave next week. We are way past deadlines for legislation to be drafted. We have attorneys that work there at the Capitol that draft legislation for members, gets introduced. We're way past those deadlines. But another thing that HCR 69, that resolution, did was it suspended deadlines for any legislation, whether it be a general law, a spending bill, or a taxing bill. It suspended those deadlines if the legislation is related to COVID-19. And so this certainly would be one of those things. Lots of states, and some have already passed laws, looking at how we can offer immunity to our healthcare professionals, to our frontline workers, even to some businesses who stepped out and maybe retooled their manufacturing process from making furniture into making PPE, masks, or things like that, gowns for healthcare workers, things like that. So, and a lot of that stuff was done in haste. Products weren't developed over a long period of time. They were done to respond to the pandemic. So there may be some relief if we can keep it narrow in the way that we do it related to COVID-19. There may be a way to for us to tweak some laws and grant some immunity to our healthcare workers for sure, and hopefully something for our business community there.
Well, and I think that would be the key because, healthcare workers, frontline workers, of course, that's its own category over here. They had to be at work doing that. That second group that you were talking about that didn't have to be at work, but not only did they go to work, but they completely redid their business to address the needs that we had due to this. So I think they would qualify. But I'm glad to hear you say narrow in scope because, just because somebody opened their snowball stand doesn't necessarily mean that they fall into that category.
That's correct. And so, we got a lot of work to do over the next 6 to 8 days. And so, but that's something that's been talked about over the last 2 or 3 weeks, maybe even a month. So I think we're close on that. I think we're close. The Senate wants to do something on that, and we do too. They've already, I understand, drafted a bill. We're looking at it, so we'll see.
Well, that's my question. Would the House go ahead and draft their own version, or are you just going to wait on the Senate and see if you concur?
No, the House will have we will have our own version, and we'll run it out there, and maybe they'll do theirs, and we'll meet in the middle. This weekend would traditionally be what is called conference weekend. We won't be in session Saturday and Sunday, but typically, if one of the chambers passes a bill, the other chamber passes that bill but changes it a little bit or a lot, as the case may be, it comes back to the original chamber, whether it's House or Senate, wherever it started, and the membership has a choice to concur and agree to the changes that the other body made, and that bill then goes to the governor to be signed or vetoed. Or you can do what's called invite conference. You can say, I'm glad you passed my bill, but I don't like the changes you made to it. We're not going to pass it as you sent it back to me. We don't like your changes, or we want to tweak something ourselves. We will, quote, invite conference. And there's a bunch of that going on. If you pull up and look at our calendar today in the House, you'll see the majority of items are in conference, where we have invited conference. The lieutenant governor will appoint 3 people. The speaker will appoint 3 people on each bill that's in conference, and those 6 people go and meet and try to hammer out the differences. If they can come to an agreement, they bring it back to the full body for a vote. Hopefully, if it gets a positive vote in both chambers, it goes to the governor.
If they can't hammer out the differences and come to an agreement, is it dead?
It's dead. That's correct.
That's the end of it there.
That's the end of it.
So basically, it's kind of looping back around to the beginning of the process. It's back in committee.
Yep.
For all intents and purposes.
It is. And some things have passed and gone on to the governor, and he's signed. The Senate finally passed yesterday. The House is, and actually Speaker Gunn's something that he's passionate and dear and near to him, and that's the human trafficking bill. That's our second bill, kind of a phase 2, you would call it. It passed 52-0, and then a member held it on a motion. So I don't know what that's about, but we'll see today. At any rate,
that's the aggravating part, Jason. I'm just going to be honest. I'm sitting here outside of the Capitol. I'm just going to be honest with you. That's aggravating. You get a unanimous vote, and then somebody goes, "Oh, wait a minute. Wait, hold on. Not so fast there, young man." And then we hold the process up. And sometimes it's for a good reason, but to me, from the outside looking in, sometimes it's just for a ludicrous reason, and it just makes no sense to me. And maybe that's just me.
No, I can assure you it's frustrating on all fronts, especially after a unanimous vote. But anyway, that's just one example of legislation that gets hung up sometimes.
Yeah, that's the way it works. But I am glad they passed it unanimously because it's a great piece of legislation. It's a great bill.
You can say that again if you want to.
Well, it is. I would tell.
No, it is.
Philip the same thing. I've told him before. It's something that's needed because it's addressing a problem that we addressed the first end of it, but then the aftermath. There's nothing there to help these victims once they're rescued.
You're correct. And look, the Speaker held a summit on this in the fall 2 years ago. Brought in people from all over the country. Experts. They set forth, hey, here's what you need to do to move your state forward in this area. Gave us a 2-phase approach. We did the first one. Now this is a second one. we certainly want to push it on across the goal line here in the next day or two.
That is fantastic. Well, I assume you're going to be gabbling into a conference somewhere in the next 10 minutes, so I know you got to go.
Going to head downtown, Dave.
You guys are working some long days right now, aren't you?
We are. Our folks are ready for us to get home, too.
I have no idea. They're going to get home. The wife's going to redecorate the whole place by the time they get home. The husband's been at the camp for 2 weeks.
Mine's got a birthday next week, so I want to be home for that.
Oh, you better be home for that. Speaker Pro Tem Jason White, always enjoy having you in here, man.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it. Appreciate what you do.
Anytime. You are always welcome. We continue on the Gallo Show next.